I don't know why I keep doing this to myself, but today we're going to be reviewing the LOMO Smena Symbol. So when it comes to Russian, specifically Soviet cameras, my experience has been varied to say the least. But I always keep coming back for more, hoping that that next camera will be the one that I seem to latch onto. Now, I've had some winners. We got the Zenit E and the little more modern lomography LOMO LCA Plus. And then there's been some dogs. A Zenit 122K, and of course the Smena 8M. The 8M isn't a bad camera, don't get me wrong, it's a great camera. I just found it a little too fiddly, too many steps and just a little too clunky, not at all refined. I'm going to be talking about an 8M today. Well, at least an 8M after a fashion. And of course, that is the Smena Symbol. Okay, so let's break this down historically. The Smena line dates to 1953 with the release of the original Smena camera. Built by Gomes, G-O-M-Z, the camera's specification has changed very little over the course of the entire line. These are basic plastic cameras. Very little in the way of bells and whistles, and mostly aimed at the youth or young photography market within the Soviet bloc. It's a simple plastic camera, fixed lens, triplet design, and no meter, of course, and just zone focusing or guesstimate focusing. The original style of Smena camera would last through 4 different models: the original Smena, the 2, the 3, and the 4, and were simple Bakelite bodies. Nothing fancy and could break easily. With the introduction of modern plastics in 1962, LOMO released a new version of the camera, the Smena 5 and 6. This was essentially the same basic style of camera with some improvements to the lens and the camera operations, but was generally still the same Smena camera as the original 1953 version. In 1963, the Smena 8 came out, and the Smena 8 was unique as it was the first camera from the Smena line that actually saw export under the brand name the Cosmic 35. In 1967, the body style was again updated with the Smena 11, and LOMO saw an opportunity and released the Smena 8M. And the Smena 8M was essentially an 8 shoved into the Smena 11 body style. But the 8M, as I can tell you, is far from a perfect camera. You had multiple steps to cock the shutter, advance the film, and the shutter release was super heavy and caused camera shake. And in 1973, gave the 8M a major update, calling it the Smena Symbol. So, let's take a closer look. On the front, you have your basic LOMO T43 triplet lens, 40 millimeters with a maximum aperture of f4. You have your aperture control, which is surprisingly linked to your film speed. Now it is rated at GOST ASA or DIN numbers. I tend to ignore that because I'm usually metering externally. But you turn this inner ring here to actually set your aperture from f4 to f16. And it actually has a really nice aperture in there. And then for shutter speeds, and then along the top, you have your focusing ring. It's a little stiff on mine, but it does have your standard icons, and you can focus down to 1 meter to infinity. And you have essentially your landscape setting, groups of people, close-up portraits as your sort of 3 major points. Usually I'm shooting at a top enough aperture and shooting wide that I generally just keep it at the infinity mark and then stop it down. And here's where the symbol gets its name, and that's located here. You have these symbols located along the edge that will tell you, based on the lighting condition, what shutter speed should you have. At the very far end, bright sunlight, cloud cover, heavy overcast, really overcast, and rain. But if you're the type who enjoys working with traditional shutter speeds, you have them set all the way here. You have bulb mode, 1/15th, 30th, 60th, 1/25th, and 2/50th, and it provides it for you. You also have to make sure when you set the shutter speed that the white notch is shown. Now, camera operation itself, as you'll notice on the top, you have your standard rewind knob, a hot shoe, but no shutter release. That's what this lever is right here. And surprisingly, it actually is quite comfortable to hold. On your back, you have your frame counter, film advance, and on the bottom, a standard rewind switch and tripod socket. Getting the camera loaded is probably the most painful thing to do. And I'm using FPP Wolfman 35, so thank you FPP for this monster film. Give me a moment to get this loaded. We'll get the Ravini Labs meter mounted, turned on, calibrated, and we'll be good to go. And I'll see you after the images. In the field, the Smena Symbol is a joy to use once you've figured out how to load the film, and it's deceptively easy. Just let the leader hang, give it a crank, and that hook will grab a sprocket. It's lightweight, comfortable to use, and having that nice long shutter release right by the lens barrel, it sits perfectly by your hand. The viewfinder doesn't really help much, but gives you a general idea of your framing without any real assistance. And of course, having that traditional film advanced lever that also cocks the shutter, absolutely brilliant. But the real winner here is that T43 lens. Sure, it's only a triplet design, but once you're shooting at like f8, it's a real cracker and gives you near edge-to-edge sharpness. Personally, my favorite part of the lens. In fact, someone has even hacked it onto a Leica M mount. Like any Soviet camera, it is buyer beware. It's always best to look at the camera first before taking the plunge. And thankfully, most of the time, these cameras are easy to repair with a bit of time, patience, and reading. And the Symbol is an inexpensive way, well, one of the inexpensive ways to break into that Soviet camera market. And it'll be a far better experience for you than, say, one of the older Smenas or the Smena 8M. On the market, these usually cost between $30 to $70, and you might even find some in the original box, like new in box. You'll also find it under the export name as the Cosmic Symbol. It's essentially the same camera, just a different branding on it. They're not for everyone. You do need some comfort level with external metering, Sunny 16, and zone and guest focusing. But if you are, it's well worth the effort, at least for the T43 lens. That's it for my video. What is your experience with Soviet cameras? Leave a comment below. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Hit that thumbs up like icon. As always, get out there, stay safe, make something cool happen. And the Symbol is an inexpensive way to get into the Soviet camera market. Well, one of the many ways, one of the many